Hello, everybody. This is Maurice Parker. Welcome to the Maurice Parker channel. If you're new, subscribe for sports and more. All right, let's get into it. We are concluding the NFL Week 10 season as the Week 11 season is approaching tomorrow. I apologize for the late delay. We're going to go into it. So, in this week, we are going to talk about a few key games this week that took place. One was the Baltimore Ravens and the Minnesota Vikings that took place on Sunday, in which the Ravens won their third straight game after starting 1-5. The key takeaways was the fact that Derrick Henry had a good game. Lamar Jackson had a very good game, and Mark Andrews had two touchdowns, I believe, in the game. It seemed like they started clicking on offense and defense. They started making plays and turnovers, really giving JJ McCarthy the blues. Even Justin Jefferson was getting his yardage, but not really being as effective as he normally is. You got to give credit to John Harbaugh and the Ravens staff. Yeah, if we're doing a great job in that game and getting them back into AFC North contention for the top spot. For the Minnesota Vikings, you just got to rally around this game and get ready to the next one tomorrow. It was definitely a tough way to lose the game at home and a stadium, a U.S. Bank Stadium, I believe. Uh, but yeah, it was just a tough overall game. You got to give credit to what credit is due. Another key takeaway in the game would be uh, there was a very unusual game last Thursday between the Denver Broncos and the Raiders. I believe I went over it, but to go over again, it was 10-7. We learned an update in that game that J.K. Dobbins might be out for the year with a significant foot injury. Unfortunately, the Broncos end up winning that game to go forward. They did not look their best with Sean Payton in that game overall. The Raiders kept the game real close in the divisional game. It's normally a close battle, but they moved on for their coach Pete Carroll. And decision that I thought, was unlucky. I thought he was a good coach. I thought that they might need a year or two to really develop into the system because they're playing against a tough division with the Chiefs and the Broncos. Um, there's another team in the West that I'm forgetting about as myself. Sorry for, unfortunately, I am blanking on the name right now. Um, see, there's the Chiefs, there's the Broncos, there's the Raiders. Who else is in that division? Not the Patriots. Uh, Steelers, no. The Chargers, with the Chargers in the division, which leads me to the Sunday night game between the Chargers and Pittsburgh Steelers, in which the Chargers won 25-10. The biggest takeaway has to be the Chargers defense was just firing all cylinders. They sacked Aaron Rodgers for a safety. Every time Warren was getting the ball, he was getting hit. They crossed two turnovers. Their defense was stellar in that game. The Steelers offense looked incomplacent in the game. Unfortunately, they did not do a good job, moving down the field. Lamb McConkey had a big day, had a touchdown. I mean, at this point, the Chargers are for real. The Chargers are a top team, and they showed why they are really one of the favorites in the AFC. The Steelers, this was a crushing defeat for the Steelers because it leaves more questions for them as they prepared against the Bengals because, earlier in the year, they had a 3-point lead in the division, and then it's always a tipping point, when they went down. Now they're 5-4. Now I will give the audience an update. Now, if the Steelers lose and the Ravens win, the Ravens will be the top of the division leaders in the AFC North. So when they play at 1 o'clock and the Ravens play at 4:25, this game has a lot of implications in it. But we will see because the Bengals won round one and the Steelers play round two tomorrow at Acrisure Stadium with Joe Flacco, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Just top threats I can name for the offense for the Bengals or the Steelers have Warren, Rogers, Metcalf. You could throw Darnell Washington in there. But we will see how that game goes. Another good game that I thought was very interesting was the fact that the Detroit Lions really destroyed the Washington Commanders. And in this game, I cannot think of the D tackle. He punched Amon St. Brown in the face late in the third quarter, but Jameer Gibbs had an outstanding day, 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown. Amon St. Brown did his thing. Dan Campbell took control of his team. He was calling the offensive play calls this week, even though it was at his specialties. He wanted to see things run a certain way in his game plan, and it was. I got to give him credit. That was an outstanding job by him. In credit to the Rams did a really good job too playing in their game. They Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, they really had it going. And the big takeaway for this game, but I cannot acknowledge it, was the great comeback by the Houston Texans, who was down, I believe, by 25 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars, came back to win the game. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, that's one of the see that show. That's a defining moment in somebody's season, because what that does is it leads your team believe that they can come back no matter what it is. When you come back from a deficit like that and win, it does what Nico Collins did his thing. The defense stepped up. It was a great test. I know he's not had the best season, CJ Stroud, but he did his thing. The Rams beat the 49ers, and that was a back and forth battle. Matthew Stafford made history. I think the first quarterback to ever have like 3 back-to-back 4 touchdown passes, 300 yards. Against a very good Rams, good 49ers team. Despite the quarterback changes, they have done a really good job in keeping pace. The playoff picture right now is looking interesting right now. I'll get into that after I talk about my last game, which between the Philadelphia Eagles and Green Bay Packers, which ended in a 13-10 victory for the Eagles. It was a great defensive battle game. This game was like the old school game. If you like great defenses, there wasn't a lot of much offense as there was defense. And I think that's the way the game should be. Sometimes it's not always about the offense, but the defense. Sometimes you want to see a good competitive game. And that reminds you, defense still matters in the NFL. I know there's a lot of rule changes, whatnot, and sometimes it's just discretion of the ref. But ultimately, that was a good game. Saquon Barkley had 60 yards. Devontae Smith had a beautiful touchdown. I think Josh Jacobs had a touchdown. It was just an interesting sequence of games for those guys. They tried a 64-yard field goal, and unfortunately, that ends up being missed or nullified. But ultimately, what comes out at the end of the game was an Eagles victory. Now, if we look at the current playoff standings right now, as it stands on Week 10 in the AFC, the top seeded team, I believe, right now is the New England Patriots, the Broncos. I'm trying to think of this. The Colts, Patriots, Broncos, Steelers, Chargers. Chargers is 5. Chargers. There's somebody before Jacksonville. I'm trying to think real quick, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a moment to see who the top team in the AFC North is as I continue to look onward, because I remember I had it first, and I could pull up that stat for you guys real quick. Thank you. In the meantime, as we look at the playoff picture for both teams, I just want to be mindful that this is like the interesting part of the NFL season, where a lot of teams are basically trying to get into the playoff picture, trying to get in. This is when the playoff picture starts to form. Like, for example, college football, they're playing hard, and their playoff picture is about to commence. So right now, if I was to tell you, now mind you, the NFL season is 18 weeks, which is before it used to be a 16-week, and it used to be 6 teams in the playoffs, and they changed it to 7 teams, which is pretty good. I do like the idea that the first seed, because it used to be the first 2 seeds get a bye week, but then they changed that because, obviously they changed it. So here's a playoff picture right now. Thank you thank you guys for giving me a moment to correct myself. So right now the Patriots are the number 1 seed, followed by the Indianapolis Colts at 2. Number 3 is the Broncos. Number 4 is the Steelers. Number 5 is the Chargers. Number 6 is the Buffalo Bills. And number 7 is the Jaguars. The team that's on the bubbles is, believe it or not, is the Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, and Bengals. They're the prize top picks right now, who's on the bench right now. In the NFC, The number one teams in the NFC are the Eagles at 1, Seahawks at 2, Lions at 3, Buccaneers number 4, the Rams are number 5, number 6 is the Bears, and number 7 is the Packers. Teams on the bubble are 49ers, Panthers, and Vikings, and Cowboys. Those were the top 4 teams that was on the bubble. This is a very interesting sequence of events right now going into the game, going into week 11. Now, we always talk about sports and more. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. But we always talk about sports and more. And, as we enter into the final stretch, this is the time where teams really start to try to make their mark. This is the part of the season where you really got to pick it up. This is the middle of the season. This is important games and all these great athletes. And the coaches are trying to come up with schemes and systems to get their teams to prepare for the next step. That's what it's about. You compete as a team, and you all had the same goal to me, trying to make it into the playoffs to try to get to the Super Bowl. But you got to take it one game at a time, because that's what you got to do. You got to focus on the task at hand. You can't think ahead until you. While thinking ahead, let me say this: while thinking ahead, you got to look at the goal in front of you and look at the game in front of you. I commend all these great athletes who's taking time out to do the craft teams, the chemistry, the fans, the coaches, everybody. I did want to say thank you to my community for our community for helping me reach close to 20,000 subscribers. We didn't get there yet, but I believe by this week we will get there. And thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, watching my videos. If you have any, other ways or suggestions that you want me to know about, let me know. I like talking about sports. I like talking about more, anything in between. I just say thank you guys for your support. I appreciate you guys. And I definitely want to see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned.